everyone. Good afternoon. It's nice to be here. We had earlier imagined this to be a little bit more cozier setting, but I think even the online format is equally interesting and it's full of warmth. So I'm excited to be here. Thank you, panelists, for joining us today. I'll straight away dive into the topic that everyone kind of touched upon in one way or the other around the COVID-19 pandemic. I think it's almost, over the last 3 months, the world has become a completely different place as we know of it now. And a lot of businesses have also been impacted in more ways than one. I wanted to open the forum by asking this question to each one of you in terms of how are you guys ensuring business continuity as leaders of the partner functions and business functions that you represent for your company? I'm assuming it's almost like a fiduciary responsibility at this point to support the partners that you usually engage with from an ecosystem perspective. Would be very keen to know what are some of the most important challenges that you're trying to solve for the partner community at the moment. So maybe we can start with Siddhartha, you, and then we can go across the panelists and collect the viewpoint. So
sure, Praveen. So you're asking about challenges in the context of coronavirus, COVID-19? What we're seeing is that partners are just as engaged right now in terms of having conversations with us, having conversations with customers, as much as customers are making themselves available. Yesterday someone was telling me that they seem to be working harder now because, there are more conversations that are happening. People aren't necessarily traveling. So Google is very committed to supporting the planet actually as a whole when it comes to COVID-19. We're actually making our G Suite capabilities available to both partners and to educational institutions and to anyone who wants to use it for free, the enterprise capabilities through the end of June. So we want to make sure everyone is able to collaborate. Obviously, those functions that are that require in-person engagement, for example, if there's training that has to be done in person, those kind of things get challenged, and those are obviously moved off a little bit. Other than that, we're seeing partners being extremely engaged.
Got it. So you see more and more engagement, more and more activities still continuing to happen, though in the online world, but it's still happening at the moment.
Yes, that's right.
Perfect. Michelle, from your perspective, you guys have been growing crazily, and you depend quite heavily on the partner ecosystem as well. What kind of challenges are you solving for at the moment, given the contemporary situation we are all in?
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I had to jump off for a second. Some of the challenges that we're all having, right, is making sure our videos are working correctly. For some reason, my WebEx camera just turned off on its own. In any event, I'm back on. I think there's a couple things, right, Praveen? There is the infrastructure challenges that we're all dealing with and learning today about how to engage our customers in a virtual environment, that for customers that are not normally engaged in a virtual environment. And I think the presenter earlier today who talked about the different industries that are at higher risk versus lower risk for getting through COVID, it was very clear that there are many industries that are going to be challenged by remote workers, and they're just not set up that way. So we've been working with our partners to help them move and transition some of their in-person meetings to virtual meetings, as well as virtual conferences. HashiCorp itself has been a remote-first company since its inception. As an open-source company, when we transitioned into enterprise, we maintained that remote-first. So we kind of have a culture that's already in place to be able to support our partners and our customers from a remote-first culture, and we're helping our partners to do that. I would say the second component to that is really what's going to be the fallout from this, which is there's going to be a lot of uncertainty around budgets and hiring. And I think those that are maybe in scope to come on board to help with some of the complexity around infrastructure today may not get funded in the same way that has been funded over the last maybe 12 to 24 months. And that's a huge opportunity, I think, for the service providers in the world and the global system integrators, because it's going to fall on the system integrators to be able to come in and position themselves as that external service provider to help those companies reduce some of the complexity in moving to a digital world, and moving away from maybe the sprawl of some of the open source tools and the and security challenges that they're having today with shifting to a digital world. HashiCorp, we clearly play in that space of automated infrastructure and security. And so we are working very rapidly to put in the hands of our global partners how they can actually help position themselves as a service provider around infrastructure as a service or infrastructure as code, things like Vault as a service with HashiCorp, and Terraform, leveraging the automation of templates. So there's a slight shift in our sales plays, and I think that's going to play, not that we want to take advantage of COVID, but I think it's just a necessary evil that a lot of those budgets are going to have to shift to service providers who are going to play the role of the lack of expertise and maybe some hires, or even with some layoffs that are happening within the enterprises.
That's a great point, Michelle. And just a quick follow-up on that. I think in the short-term scenario, in the next 3 to 5 or maybe 6 weeks kind of a time frame, the demand from new customers is going to most likely reduce, and there'll be more and more focus to protect the existing core and work with existing customers. So will that mandate, in your context, will that mandate a little bit of a reprioritization of the partners that you work with, purely from a capacity versus capability standpoint? How are you dealing with some of those situations at the moment?
That's a great question. And, HashiCorp is in hypergrowth, right? We're not a multi-billion-dollar company, although we are on our way there. We have federated really early as an organization, which means that normally a company won't have a second or third real market or product line until it's about $1 billion company. HashiCorp federated really early because the market was driving it and demanding it. And so we have essentially 3 massive markets that we play in: the networking infrastructure space, the security space, and the provisioning and automation space. So looking at those massive markets for each one of our potential customers, net dollar expansion and growing within our existing base has actually been a priority of ours for the last 12 to 24 months. And so land and expand is a natural sales play for us to go in and land with Terraform Enterprise, then move to, once you're provisioning your and automating your workloads to the cloud, to then make sure that they're secure with Vault and secrets management, and then standing up Vault as a service. Just like the cloud partners, so Azure, AWS, and GCP, and then internationally, many other cloud partners are struggling with the lift and shift didn't quite drive as much cloud adoption, maybe 5% when they thought it would be 30 or 40%. They're struggling with driving those $100 million pre-commits. And the way to do that is through SI. We've seen AWS have a huge commitment in their partner community, which they have not in the past because Azure is growing at twice the rate. And that essentially is because we need to be able to accelerate adoption of the commitment that our customers have already made. So land and expand is definitely a play for us, but it's not necessarily a new play for us.
Got it. Hina, from your perspective at IBM, in your capacity of managing partnerships in North America, what kind of trends are you spotting at the moment?
Sure. And Praveen, I'm going to take a customer perspective in answering this. Mm-hmm. So what's happening for my partners' customers, or our partners' customers, is they're changing, right? So their priorities are right now, short term, very much focused on business continuity and working that for their own company. And so what's happening is some of the POCs or something like that are being delayed a bit. A lot of the large transformation type of projects and all are continuing, but we believe that maybe decisions might get deferred a bit. And so what's that doing for us in terms of how we work with the partners is we're basically leveraging this to do other things. Like, hey, let's go target new clients, right? And let's go work on new initiatives, and or let's go train and do enablement learning where people didn't necessarily have time. And then fourth is really doing proactive customer presentations. Hey, this customer has this. We were so busy otherwise doing this, but now we have time to go approach them on a proactive strategy. So those are the ways, if you look at it from an end customer perspective, this is how we're shifting because of the changes that our partners are seeing with their clients, how we're shifting in how we work with them and support them. Okay.
Got it.
Yeah.
Interesting. So I think you're taking a little bit of a aggressive stance in terms of using the time. Yeah.
That's right.
Like you're taking a little bit of an aggressive stance in using the time more effectively and reaching out to new customers and doing more of a practice development, right? I think at your scale, that seems like a good strategy to continue the engagements and conversations. Turning to Ram, who comes from the other side in the capacity of a advisory company, a product engineering provider, a IT services provider. Ram, what have been your major concerns and major action points in terms of surviving the current situations at an Accenture level?
Yeah, thanks, Praveen. Like Hina said, I will take a customer perspective and then I'll talk about how we are working with partners to address this, right? One thing we are definitely seeing, this outbreak is really driving all the customers and the leaders in the organization for an undeniable call to action, right? And there are two things that's happening: how fast they assess the changes that's happening in the marketplace, and most important, and this is our priority, is how they are going to reduce the impact, number one, on people, right? That's the big thing which we are focused on along with our customers and their end customers and the changes in the organization. If you look at it, this is now exposing the vulnerability of their supply chain. How do they address it? How do they enable remote working of the people, which is going to be the single biggest thing that is going to address both the short-term and long-term challenges, right? And enabling a kind of a different digital workplace. So what we are doing is, we are working with the customers along with the partners because we are very, very clear this kind of scenario, Accenture cannot go single-handedly and address everything without the help of, like what Michelle said, there are a lot of tools Michelle's team brings in from HashiCorp, how we work with GCP to enable all these things which I talked about, right? So if I look at it, our focus has been people is the center. How do I enable the workforce? How do I take care of the people for our customers, right? So that's been our, the changes that we have done in the last 2 to 3 weeks. What we are driving our customers is to quickly make them to become an elastic digital workplace. So what do I mean by that? How do I, the three things, right? One is how do I provide remote working collaboration tools to their employees? How do I provide a very robust network connectivity and with advanced security features? All these three things I talk about cannot happen with Accenture, and we are working with our partners to get it done, right? So what we also see in the process is all these things, while obviously it's like Michelle was saying, it's a challenge, right? But it's also opening up an opportunity to address the short term, but also change the way they work for long-term challenges if it happens again, right? So how do we enable these things? So that's what our priority has been. But again, from a COVID situation, we have put people as the real center of focus, and how would we enable our customers to address their people concerns, their end customers and the organizations through all these three things which I talked about, Praveen.
All right, very interesting. So what you're saying is basically through the elastic digital workplace, you are making sure that the customers keep their lights on, and that is from a short-term perspective, and from a long-term perspective, continue to build resiliency in the way they operate, right? So that's an interesting point. So assuming that things will get better over the next few months, and it'll come close to business as usual in one way or the other. I wanted to check with you, right? I mean, partnerships have been there for a long period of time, and no one would deny the role of partners in driving the digital agenda forward. The bigger question, though, and that is something that we get quite often from our customers, is how do you make the right choices in partnership? partners, right? Specifically when there are so many options available, both on the OEM side and system integrator side and the ISV side. How do you keep the partners motivated and committed to your business? And maybe we can start with Hina, you to collect your point of views, and then maybe Siddhartha, you could add to this as well. But Hina, what's the magic recipe to identify the right partners and make sure that they stay committed to you for a prolonged number of years and time frame? What's the mantra there?
Yeah, no, sure. So from a GSI perspective, there is no doubt that the largest ones, whether you call it the top 15 or the top 25, they play a critical role, as IBM is very focused on large enterprises or enterprises. Sometimes you have 3 or 4 all present from a GSI perspective at a company. And so it is important that we work with them. And so we do invest heavily in those from end-to-end perspective, resources from IBM's side, from a business development all the way to technical, hands-on, creating solutions, helping them enable, train in a deep way, end-to-end, right? And then there are, if you're looking at, like, say, for example, systems, servers, storage, things of that sort, the regional value-added resellers play a really critical role there, and they're the ones that are driving the large revenue there, right? In the multi millions, billions. So based on kind of where the focus is, we pick partners. I will say that on the lower tier of maybe the GSIs, I do see that many of the lower area ones are doing something differentiating to really win in the market against the big guys. and so it's been great to align to their niche of their expertise and their differentiation. Maybe they've become more ISV-like in creating assets and so on. And so how do you really integrate our technology with theirs and focus go-to-market with those focus areas or solutions? So that's kind of a mix. And then how do we keep them motivated? Praveen, I mean, it's really, the more we can keep telling them and teaching them about where we see success ourselves from a direct sales perspective, they love aligning to that, right? And so, that type of focus where there's, capabilities that customers need, along with where we're winning, I think that's the formula for kind of, besides all the investment and everything else we do to support them, but that's kind of the keeping them motivated piece.
Got it. And it made an interesting point in terms of spotting the SIs who have an inclination towards turning to a solution orientation. And I think, Siddhartha, in your role, you look at a lot of these SaaS type of ISVs. ISVs were, in general, bringing solutions. Do you see an influx of the GSIs or system integrators orienting towards solutions that you could also take into your portfolio? How do you manage these? How do you identify the right sort of partners, and what goes behind spotting them at the right time for the right opportunities and so on? It'll be good to get some insight on that.
I think, look, choosing which partners to work with comes down to what is your strategy as a company. So if I look at Google Cloud and what is our strategy at Google Cloud, it is one about focusing on a certain set of verticals, 6 verticals, healthcare, financial services, retail, telco, media, entertainment, manufacturing. And now some of these verticals, given COVID-19, might be impacted. And if they're impacted, then our focus might shift. But figuring out, if we want to deliver solutions into these verticals, those solutions will consist of some capabilities that we will develop. For example, we're developing visual search, the ability to shop from a scene, or we're developing a recommendations engine, which is leveraged off of the recommendation engine for Google Shopping for retail. But then we need to add to that the ISVs that are particular to retail, that do really wonderful stuff in retail, and then work with partners such as Accenture, given Accenture is on the panel here, to take that entire solution to market. The question is, who are the ISVs that are really important in the retail vertical, given I'm taking retail as an example, and that can complete the solution to the problem that we want to solve for our customers, and who are the GSIs that bring domain knowledge. So that's one vector, which is, the strategy around verticals. The other part of it is, completeness and choice. So we want to be a very open company, and we want to win on the backs of providing customers completeness and choice. And not all of the capabilities that are required by our customers will be delivered or built by us. So there, we're looking at how do we complete our solution stack. So for example, we work with Palo Alto Networks, and we're picking those vendors who are able to complete the solution stack where we're not building, for example, web application firewall capabilities. Those are coming from Palo Alto Networks. And we're also providing choice. So even though we might have a solution around analytics and data warehousing, which is our BigQuery solution, we're also enabling third-party solutions to work on our platform. And we're giving customers choice. If they want a NoSQL database, they can get that from MongoDB provisioned in our marketplace. If they want a Kafka-based solution, they can get that from Confluent, again, provisioned in a marketplace, and making sure our reps, et cetera, are paid on it. And the other third key thing to decide on which partners to work on is to decide which segment of the market are you going after. Are you going after customers that are SMB customers? Are you going after customers that are mid-market customers? Or are you going after customers that are large enterprises? So for example, if we were to pick large enterprises, which is a key focus for us, and the mid-market, naturally the GSIs are a key area of focus for us. So working with the Accentures, Deloitte, KPMGs of the world, that becomes de facto because they have the enterprise relationships that are there. But at the same time, the RSIs bring the innovation where they can leverage our AI/ML portfolio and be able to take innovative niche solutions. So those are ways in which we're thinking of which partners to work on. And you asked about, how do we ensure, how that they stay committed to you. At the end of the day, it comes down to just one thing, which is, are we enabling customer success together? And if we're enabling that customer success together, it means that we will win and our partners will win. And our focus is on how we can innovate and deliver 10x thinking together to those customers. And in that way, the partners will definitely continue to stay with us. So we have to innovate, our partners have to innovate, and together we have to deliver success for these customers.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And just building on that, I'm getting one question right now in the chat as well, which kind of relates to what you said, Siddhartha, and I'll probably turn to Michelle for a point of view. The question is very simple. Despite a lot of partnerships happening everywhere, most of the partnerships actually fail, right? So what are the reasons, Michelle, in your experience you've seen in terms of partnerships not delivering the expected value on both sides and ultimately for the customer as well?
Great, thanks. So, I'll take a spin on really what we're seeing from a transitional world in the ecosystem model. Prior to maybe 5 years ago, the channel looked essentially like a hub and spoke, right? You had a vendor at the center, and then you had relationships with individual partners, whether those were resellers, SIs, GSIs, OEMs. And all of those relationships were pretty independent because the customer at the time was really looking for defined technical outcomes in an IP-based world, on-prem, out of the box, hardware and software. And as we've morphed into a post-transactional world, to Siddhartha's point, we're really integrated now around data rather than just systems, right? And that's that business use case of what the business outcome is around that data and what they need to do with that. And so we've moved from what I'll call a hub and spoke traditional channel model to an ecosystem model where we're creating an orchestration of multiple on-demand services that aligns to the flexibility of the customer's needs. And that means that we're going to drive a lot more partner to partner. For example, in every opportunity that HashiCorp essentially is operating in, we have a cloud partner. So if that's GCP, we're going to be working with their sellers and with their teams in place. We also need to have a system integrator in that account to help deliver services and to drive adoption for the customer because the customer needs help today in this complex world. And then third, there's going to be other ISVs, whether that's Palo Alto Networks or F5, et cetera, that are also driving providers or integrations with us. And so we've now developed more of what I'll call an ecosystem model that is completely like the Olympic gold rings, right? Integrated together. And if we're not working and driving that P2P relationship, we're going to fail because we're going to work in silos. And so our team at HashiCorp, we're building really a global strategy across each of those pillars, our cloud practice, our ISV, and our SI. And then we execute locally with our partner sales managers to ensure that they're bringing all 3 or 4, in some cases, of that new sphere of influence, into serving and supporting the customer. And we're rewarding our sales team to do that. And so we're rewarding them and paying them to bring in SI partners. And even though we don't transact that business, we're still rewarding them and comping them on that. We're rewarding them for bringing in a cloud partner. Even though they don't get paid on that cloud business, they're getting commissioned on that to make sure that they're building that 3-way sphere of influence in the account, because it's the only way that this new transformational business is going to happen for our customers.
So what you're saying is basically a ecosystem-led approach to winning customer opportunities is going to be important, and partners who don't participate in that kind of a model are likely to sort of lose out, right? So I'll take that and pose a question to Ram. Ram, you being one of the strategic partners to a lot of companies that are there on the panel today, in fact, all of them, how are you keeping pace as a company on all the technology transformation that are floating around, right? There are things that are emerging in AI, there's automation, there's blockchain, there's IoT, cloud is transitioning in many ways at the moment, right? So how do you're probably participating in all the ecosystems that Michelle kind of talked about, but how are you keeping pace with the rapid reinvention and new formats of technology becoming mainstream every now and then? So what's been your strategy to deal with all of that?
Okay, great question. I first want to resonate what Siddhartha and Michelle talked about. For us, and this was a study which we recently did. Accenture Research was doing this study with the top 2,000 companies, and most of the executives came out with this point. The stakes of innovation has never been more higher than what they are seeing today, right? So what does it mean for Accenture, right? So we figured this out long back, and that's one of the reasons why we have so many ecosystem partners, and we are the #1 system integrator for Google, for AWS. We named the top players. We are the #1 system integrator. What we figured out very quickly is this model of trying to do it alone would not work, right? We want to work with players like GCP. The example Siddhartha said on Palo Alto, we are working with GCP in their migration, right? We help them create the reference architecture and migrate, right? So for us, the drive has always been to getting it right requires just not a single player, but an ecosystem of partners. So what we have done in the recent past is, sorry, am I audible?
Yep.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, sorry. Yeah, what we have been doing is, how do I create this ecosystem of partners? And, to your point, we just don't get into a collaboration with GCP. We create business groups. Today, if, probably at some point, Siddhartha and me, we need to talk about this. We have an Accenture Google business group, right? We have, targets together. How do we go and transform the customer? And Siddhartha made a very powerful point, which is how Accenture also looks at it. How do you make this whole partnership successful? It's not about Accenture or Google, right? It's not about Accenture or IBM. It's not about Accenture or AWS. It's about what is the customer problem we solve together, right? Once we have that, it becomes so fast and easier. And what we do, to your question, is there is so much of technologies that's happening in the market. The easiest way, what we are trying to do, and this is something we have evolved and we are still learning, is creating what we call as the precision plays with our partners, right? This is for a specific industry vertical. We create a reference architecture. We create a precision play. So there is a ready-made reference architecture, right? In that model, to what Michelle said, we just don't work with one provider. We work on this Terraform. How do I fast, get these systems up on a platform? How do I quickly stand a customer on a platform? How do I integrate them into an ecosystem? This is not a single partner play. We work with GCP, we work with, Michelle, we work with IBM in making all these things possible. For us, creating this precision play for a specific industry vertical has been hugely beneficial, and that's the model which we would move forward as well.
While you were speaking, Ram, there was one question I got which was kind of related to what you said. So the question really is, how do principal OEMs, and maybe Hina, you could respond to it, how do companies like IBM attach evaluation metrics for partners, right? What metrics do you put together which are beyond just the revenue metrics to identify whether a particular partnership worked for you or not, right? And what's the time duration that you give for a partnership to mature in some of the newer workloads in digital technology that's floating around?
Yeah. No, so in terms of success, there's no doubt that the revenue, right? So for example, with GSIs, we do work out, globally, what's our target post-sell revenue, because in many cases, we would sell our software or something directly, but we give them credit for the influence or post-sale part of that. And there's also a resell. The GSIs can
outside of revenue, Hina, what are the metrics outside of revenue?
Sure. And so the others are really their level of skill, number of people that are trained, skilled, certified. If they lose that level of certification, then an opportunity comes about, they can't bid, right? So we will not allow them to do the deal registration. So it's a mix of both revenue as well as technical enablement, certification capability that we define, and how much we invest ourselves with it, but how much funding they get from us, what we might call business development funds, which could be used in many ways, a lot of flexibility. But those are typically, Praveen, the measurements are those, right? Revenue and the skills.
Yeah, Siddhartha, you have a point? Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to add to what Hina was saying, because I think that this also goes back to the original question you asked about why do partnerships fail, and which Michelle was addressing, which is around alignment of expectations and incentives and a common definition of success. What does that mean? And I think it comes to sort of four things that we need to think about. One is this a strategic fit? Is this partnership a strategic fit? So is there clarity on our goals? Is there clarity on why this would be differentiating for both sides? Are the goals aligned? That's the main thing. So when we're evaluating partners, we're saying, okay, is there a strategic fit here? The second thing is a structural fit. Structural fit meaning, is there a good economic and operational structure that enables these partnerships to win and to succeed? So is there incentive alignment for our reps, incentive alignments for our marketing teams, incentive alignments for our leadership? Is there a fit around operational structure, meaning governance models, do they exist, etc.? And then, KPIs, what KPIs are being put in place to deliver that? But for us at Google, culture is a really, really important piece. And so one of the key things as we're evaluating partners is whether there is a cultural fit, meaning, is there a compatible set of values between us and that partner? Are our beliefs the same? Are our management styles similar? Because otherwise, it's like a marriage. And if those things aren't working, then it's not going to be successful. And the last thing that we look at is a behavioral fit, meaning, is there trust between us? Can we depend on each other? Can we take leap of faith? How do we do conflict management? How do we create a win-win situation? So those four things around structural fit, strategic fit, cultural fit, and behavioral fit are things that we take into consideration as we think about, how do we evaluate which partners to work with.
Yeah. Just to add on to what Siddhartha said, I really think cultural fit is a very, very important thing, right? If we don't get that straight, I really think most of the partnerships fail. Is there is a revenue, there is an incentive, but culturally, if that fitment doesn't happen, we have seen many times we have walked away from partnership because of this culture problem.
So my question there is, how do you think of the partner persona slightly differently, right? You have these GSIs, you have ISVs, you have resellers. What about customers, right? Are these enterprises transitioning from being customers to partners? What are the scenarios in which you are partnering with customers for something which is more than the transactional opportunity that you have with that customer at that moment? Is customer really becoming the partner, Accenture? For Accenture, Ram?
Sorry, I missed it. Is a customer becoming a partner? Can you repeat the question?
So what I was saying was, Ram, that traditionally, if you think of partners, they are your typical GSIs or ISVs or channel partners and so on. Is there a paradigm shift where customers are also becoming partners for joint solutioning and a little bit of a future road mapping instead of just focusing on the transactional opportunity?
Yeah, it depends on the vertical or industry segment you would address, right? For example, if we, for HashiCorp, we work with them and we partner with them, right? Google, we work on some of the latest things, on as part of the development, and we partner with them. But if I look, it depends on a specific industry. Because most of the players in this forum come from the software business, yes, they would be our partners and they would be our customers as well, right? But together when we create a product, then it's a joint play. I would not say that they are a customer or a partner, but together we are addressing a different industry segment, a different problems for our different customers, right? So I would not say that, hey, all our customers are becoming our partners or all our partners are becoming our customers, right? But in the in the panel today, all the four of us together, if you see, we are customers, we are partners to each other, right? Yeah.
Hina, I want to comment on that thought that you just made. So in the cases of, say, SaaS companies, right, the companies that Siddhartha works with and so on, they are customers in that they may embed your AI capabilities. They may use your cloud for their SaaS offerings, but guess what? They want a partner, right? Yeah. They're not going to just say, here's the money. They might, I think they've been doing some of that with AWS, but they really want a partner. So indeed, they're customers clearly, and they want to be partners. And if you as a company can't offer both, then it's not as strong, it's not worthwhile, right? Yeah. And I will say in the case of even enterprises, we have, one example is Bank of America, where we're the first to come out with FSS-ready public cloud. And it was done as hey, we want to invest, we need this done, can we invest together toward this solution, right? And so
that's a good point. So you build capabilities, you partnered with the customers. Great point. Exactly. Does any of that resonates with you as well in your interactions with customers? Is that behavior coming up as well? Michelle, are you there on the call?
Yes, I'm here. So I think I want to go back to the partnering part where our customers, I think, do want to partner with us. And it comes down to what a few folks have said on this call today, which is about creating blueprints and also about business outcomes rather than technology outcomes. So when we look at how we go to market with our customers, we have to drive a business use case with that customer, not just from how are they going to adopt or what I'll call implement our technology, how are they going to integrate and adopt technology? And that goes way beyond basic sales of technology. And to answer the question that you asked before about how do we invest beyond, I would say, the traditional transactions, we actually, HashiCorp, we've kind of flipped our partner program on its head where I care a whole lot less about the transactional revenue dollars. Well, yes, we're all going to win together if we go together and solve the customer problem and we partner with our customers. But what I really care about is working with my counterparts at GCP and at Accenture and at IBM Global Services so that they and I can work together to build that blueprint and provide the right training and enablement. And then we work together to incent our field sellers and our sales teams to keep those motions going, to keep the customer on track and to be driving towards the business outcomes that they actually defined up front, right? Oftentimes they define an outcome that says, I want to transform all of my retail stores to be able to service customers at kiosks. right? That's the actual business goal. But we look towards the technology so often, and we think just implementing a technology solution is going to solve that. That's not what's going to solve that. You have to start actually working together to integrate that technology and drive people and process change. So that's a whole different go-to-market practice than just reselling technology.
And Praveen, if I can add something to what Hina had said when Hina was talking about the SaaS partnerships, I was smiling because that was wonderfully said, which is that if you look at all the SaaS players, we want every one of those SaaS players to be a customer of Google, meaning they should be running on Google. But you can't get there unless you co-create and co-innovate with them, where you actually help create differentiation, leveraging Google capabilities and the SaaS partners capabilities, and define a really interesting joint go-to-market. So for example, how can you take a commerce SaaS player and blend in Google Shopping such that you can actually drive better price optimization and markdown for the merchants that are supported by the commerce player. And at the same time, you can create greater discoverability for the merchants into Google Shopping, right? Those kinds of intersections, when we can create that, then they're really excited to work together, take that to market. And by the way, you get them to become customer of yours by bringing them onto your platform because you've delivered that unique value, differentiation, and the joint go-to-market. So it's like,
and I think I think that's an excellent point. And in that same vein, I think in that same context, customers start feeding you with ideas of differentiation, which is where you then also work backwards to find out who are the right partners going to be, and then build that solution that promises to deliver value to the customer. That way, I see the partnerships becoming, like Michelle said, more ecosystem driven, where customers are obviously at the center of it, and then you find the right solutions that will deliver value to those customers. And it's a great discussion. I think we are overshot on the time, so we'll have to probably sign off here. I did get some questions, and I tried putting them to the panelists as well. There are a few more, but what we will do is we will circulate these questions offline, and then we'll look to get your comments from all of you, and then we'll probably publish that out as a blog or something. But thank you so much, everyone. This has been a great conversation. I definitely think that digital entropy can be achieved through an ecosystem of partnerships. And I think the way to measure the partnerships, the way to think about the partnerships, and more importantly, the way to ensure that the partnerships don't fail is what we learned in the session today. And I think the audience had a pretty interesting takeaway in terms of thinking of partnerships for this. So thank you once again, everyone, and back to Nivedita.